Hello Internet, welcome back to Let's Make a Portal thing. So last time we were playing around with cubes and we had a plane and some black cubes that we were rendering in our underworld, as I was calling it. I've kind of expanded that a little bit and added some moon assets. I'll stick the asset link below in the description so you guys can check that out. It's just a basic moon scene. There's a planet in the back, that's just the skybox. But to catch you up, we can actually rotate this thing. And the texture applied to our quad actually is changing as we do this. So the way we're doing this is we have our camera here, and it is rendering a different layer than our original camera. So this camera is only rendering this little box, and the second camera is rendering everything else. Well, it's just rendering the ground, but the ground is everything else at this point. So that's what we've got so far. What I'm thinking is we are going to touch this up a bit. First, I'm going to edit this so that it draws a circle. So all we need to do there is create a quick shader, which I just totally lost. Shader, standard surface shader. Let's create a portal main portal shader, sure. And so this is just going to draw it's going to more or less crop the outside and just clip all the pixels that are outside of the circle. Other than that, it's just going to be standard shader. So there's not going to be anything crazy going on here. The only other things, I have changed a few other things while it's opening up Visual Studio. So with the material, I updated that so that this material is actually black. And then I stuck an emissive texture, which is the render texture, instead of what we were doing previously. And so by using the emissive texture, it's actually taking the light and projecting it out. So we can still light the material, but it doesn't shade as darkly as it would. And I think that helps kind of bring out a little bit more lifelike quality. It doesn't look like a painting anymore. It looks like a portal into another realm because the light is actually coming out of it. So that was sort of one thing I tried to do. Right, now that this portal shader is open, we can, this is going to be almost identical to if you watched my Let's Draw a Flat Shader video series. We're going to do something very similar to that. So we have all of this stuff. This is all good. All we want is our albedo is going to not use this color from our texture. It's actually going to use a float 3 of zeros. And so that's just our black. And then we also want to set the emission equal to CRGB. And so this is just going to take our texture that we're looking up, plug it into the emissive texture, and it should be good. Just to quickly run through that, I'm going to actually apply that. I'm going to apply that shader to our material. So where is it? Custom portal shader. That worked well. Let's apply our material there. It looks like we're getting a black. Huh. Okay, that wasn't what I expected. So the emission should be that. Huh. Okay, this is weird. Did it save? I always have to check that now. What's it doing? Okay, just to make sure it's actually looking things up correctly, I'm gonna pull out that black. Yeah, that's apparently the problem. Oh, I know what's happened. So there's a multiplication here. We don't want this multiplication. So we do have this color. We're going to well, there's a few things we can do. The color is going to multiply either the scene or it's going to be the canvas color. We can do either or, but we can't do both without adding a second color. I think for now, let's use the color here. And it'll be the canvas color. So we can delete it from that multiplication and call this the canvas color. And now, emission. We'll change that name too, and there we go. So we have our texture. You can see it's barely lit. I have a light in this room, which is what is lighting all of this. I don't know why two of the sides are differently lit. It's just happening. I didn't finish baking the light mapping, and when I record these, I try to turn that off. Mostly because that just takes up a ton of my computer, and recording does as well. So now we have same thing we had previously. It's just got in a custom shader now. So what we can do is calculate the radius. And the radius, well, let's calculate the X and Y positions first. So X is going to be the UV main texture dot X. And we'll subtract 0.5 from that. And we'll do the same for Y. And so this is just centering our circle around 0, 0. And then we can do the calculations that way. So now we can do an in of our, this needs to be an underscore, so all of that is going to be wrong above this, but we'll do the exact same thing just with our X coordinate, fix our mistake. And now we have our X and our Y position. What we can do is plug those. This is still going to be a little bit wrong. These are going to be from negative 0.5 to 0.5. We need to multiply these by 2. So if we do that, like so, now we get X and Y, and we can calculate the radius from that, which is going to be the square root of X squared plus Y squared, which I'm just doing multiplication here. There's a POW function if you want to. Like we could write this as POW of Y squared, and this just takes it to an exponent. But we can just do multiplication here because multiplication is going to be faster than calling a function. So now we've got this. This should get our radius. And now, if the radius, well, how do we want to do this? Clip 1 minus the radius. So if the radius is greater than 1, we're going to clip the pixel. And that means just don't draw it. And so how this is working is if clip receives an argument less than 0, it's not going to draw that pixel. It's not going to draw that fragment, actually. But for this, it just matters that it's a pixel. So if it's below that, it won't draw it. So we should get a circle in the middle, and all the outer edges should not be drawn. Like so. So now we have a perfect circle. And yeah. We have our little circle portal, and we can do all sorts of fun stuff. It works the exact same. The only difference is now it's a circle. So, I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting. Kind of getting there. But now I want to add sort of a ring around the outside. And I was also thinking of maybe like some effects or something to kind of warp it, but I'm not too sure I'm fond of that. So we might leave that for later. But for now, let's get like a white trail that kind of goes around the outside. And then we can kind of draw that. Or actually, we don't even, well, I'm thinking we could use just a standard like sprite and just rotate it around. Or we could use the shader to do this. why don't we use transparency? So one sec while I pull up a transparency shader so we can have a template to go off of. Okay, so we have a transparency shader here. This guy was asking to make his mesh transparent, and we can just pull off from that. And so what we need is we need these tags and this blend state. I don't know if the blend is required. I'm pretty sure it isn't, but it doesn't hurt to have it. You can actually, so there's other things you can do to do these blendings. It handles how your shader is drawn on top of something that was drawn before it. So if you want to do like additive shaders or something, these blend modes are how you do that. This one is just taking the alpha and blending those two together. So there's nothing too complicated there. What this queue is doing is it's putting it in the transparent queue. So when you render transparent objects, it's really, so there's a depth map when you're rendering. And in order to make that render correctly, you render transparent textures from front to back, because they're still going to write a depth map. And that's important because if you don't do that, if you do it in the wrong order, say you draw like a window and there's some other windows behind that one, if your depth map is already drawn for the first one, all the ones behind it are going to get called and they're not going to get drawn. So with transparent textures, the order matters. So Unity usually does this for you, but you need to set some flags to let it know that it needs to do it for you, because it's not gonna go out of its way to figure out this kind of stuff. So you actually have to tell it, hey, this is transparent, go figure it out. And for the most part it does. So that should be all we need there. All I'm gonna do to test this is just make it semi-transparent, so we should be able to see through this now. Or not. So I feel like I've used that example before. It was in my history and I thought it was because it worked. It may not. Yeah. Starting to question things. Oops. Starting to question things. Okay. Let's get rid of that. And we don't need shadows. Sorry, I'm deleting things, but I'm deleting the blend state and I'm deleting the full shadows. This isn't going to receive shadows because it's a portal. And I don't know how to get, I haven't figured out yet how we're going to get like shadows to like, say there's a light in one of the worlds. How do we get the shadows to come through to the other one? Don't know how we're going to do that. I have no idea how we're going to do that. It's going to be interesting though. I kind of am curious if we're going to solve that or how we're going to solve that. But it's a problem we'll have. But for now, transparency seems to be the bigger question. I guess I go on my search again. Okay, this is looking a little bit more familiar. They're saying I need to add an alpha flag to this thing. So I was playing around with this. This is declaring, I haven't really talked about this in any of my videos. So what this is doing is it's saying we're going to have a surface shader with the function surf. These have to match up, so surf and surf. We're using standard lighting, and then there's other flags. Like I had the full forward shadows, and that's allowing us to do forward shadowing. What we do need is we need the alpha, and once I add this, ta-da! Okay, so now we have a semi-transparent thing. You can see stuff behind it, which is what we want. So, ta-da! That's awesome. Now we want to kind of fade it around the edges. And so how we're going to do that is I kind of want like a ramp thing. So as it gets near the edge, it stays the same until it gets to a certain boundary, and then it fades away really quickly. So we have between 0 and 1 to work with. But those are the pixels that are going to be drawn. Everything else is going to get clipped anyway. So it doesn't matter. What we do need to do is figure out a formula for this stuff. And so we can do a max of 1 or 10 times the radius. And so this is going to do 1 for the first, no, that's not going to work. It's going to have to be 1 minus the radius. And the reason that is because we want to start, so we want our alpha to be opaque at the center. And then it will slowly, this curve is going to go down like linearly. And then when we get to 0.9 radius, it's going to start fading out. And then it should fade from 1 to 0 over 0.1 because of this times 10. So that's the idea there. And it kind of works. No, I lied. It doesn't work at all. Interesting. Maybe, no. Huh. I'm going to turn off this clip quick. Just to see. Oh. My bad. I put in a max function, which is going to take the maximum of 2 values. So if it fell below 1, it was just going to set it back to 1. We want to use min. That's going to take the minimum. So this way, if we're above 1, it's just going to use 1 instead. And that way we're just clamping those values so they don't get way outside where we want them. And there we go. So now it fades away a little bit better. Still not fading away the way I had thought it would though. And I think part of this is because of we're emitting things. So since we're doing an emissive thing, I'm actually going to multiply our emission by our alpha. And this should work. It'll just take the emission value and multiply it by our alpha value. Like so. So now our like satellite and our Earth kind of fade out a little bit more. And I should be able to just pull that smoothness all the way down, and it should kind of get us a little bit more of a fade. There we go. So it looks a little bit almost bezeled. But we get a fading out portal thing. And then we can add an effect around the outside. Probably do that in a different video because I have to think about what that's going to be. We may do like a particle effect, which is no shaders or anything, or we may do something else. So we'll see where that goes. But for now, we have a portal thing. I'm saying thing way too much. Oh well. What we can do now is introduce an exponent. I talked about this POW function earlier. We're going to use that now. And this doesn't exist yet, but we're going to multiply our alpha by some function so that we'll get some exponential fall off instead of what we would normally expect. So I can take this, plug in that. We're going to want some sort of range. It's being weird with the formatting. That's okay. We can fix that. So we have our exponent. The exponent is going to be named exponent because I can't think of anything better. We'll give it a range between 1 and 24. Why not? And then default will be 2. So if you give it a value, an exponent of 1, it's just going to be a linear function. But if you put in something higher, then it's going to do this fun stuff that we're going to get to right now. Okay, so I can play with this a bit. And we get just a harder fall off is what this is turning into. So what it's doing is it's actually curving things out sooner. I want to invert this function because I want it to kind of do this instead of doing this, which is what it's doing. That. Instead of what it's doing right now. So how do we do that? Actually, I imagine if we bring it, yeah, if we bring it to a negative value, it does something like that. We get sort of an exponential fall off. So something like this, where it looks, yeah, interesting. Bezeled, I guess. I already said it looked bezeled before I did this, but now it looks bezeled. Before it was kind of zoo, zoo, zoo. Now it's the sound effects are required. So we have our portal. The portal looks kind of like a window. Actually, I kind of like that. Looks pretty sweet. So there's this for now. Next video, I think we're going to do something around the outside, just to kind of change things around. I don't know where it's going to go, but I was thinking just kind of like some white outline or something. And if that's what we do end up going with, that's pretty easy to do. But that's what we have. So hopefully this was interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like or comment below. Try to read those. So if you say something, or you want to say something, let me know. And yeah. So until next time, see you, Internet.